There was a person that wrote into the show tonight asking me a question, and I'm going to bring that forward, and I want to use it as an illustration to invite you into an opportunity to also explore with me the sense of constancy, the sense of who and what we are essentially that is unchanging, even though our experience is unchanging, even though our thoughts are changing, our emotions are changing, our behaviors and expressions are changing, but there's something fundamental about who and what we are that has the sense of constancy. And I think it's in large part plays a piece in the exploration that this person who wrote in is interested about. She says, my inquiry question is, how can we tell what the emotional self is so that it can be watched and identity can be woken up from? So that there's that wakeful quality of being where we're not just identified with that milieu or kind of inner ecosystem type of weather patterns of emotions. She goes on to say, it's a bit easier for me to watch the thoughts as objects, but the emotional self is an environment. Nicely worded. And since the heartbreaks of life swell up the emotional self, and I'm going to skip a few things she said here, is there anything you can recommend to help the identity of the emotional self? She's talking about a kind of freeing up from identification with emotions or the sense of self that's defined by emotions, and freeing up identification with that so that one can be more conscious and wakeful. She goes on to say, can you recommend to help free the identity of the emotional self, or we might say from the emotional self, to help free? And then she goes on to say, and the heartbreak that has no story, and she explains it has a sensation of grasping, but there's no story, just that kind of energetic of a kind of, how I would describe some of the heartbreak I've had is it's almost a kind of twist or knot that is grasping, and it can be either grasping to kind of like keep it together, like I don't want this heart to break open and or soften or open up. I want to keep my emotions in. I don't want to cry, or I don't want to break down. I want to have control. And sometimes there's a kind of grasping inwardly, or there could be a kind of grasping externally for a missing experience or the loss of, let's say, the presence of someone that is no longer an active part of our lives, for example. So she goes on to say, how do I let my heart break open into the radiance of true nature? Watching and sitting and being with it. Is this the answer? Well, that's a wonderful, wonderful approach. So I hope that you have sat with it and just really taken time to be with that sensation. So my response to this question is kind of layered, and I think that what I have found most helpful when being not only with emotional content that I can feel my consciousness is being pulled into or becoming more identified with, and that might look like something like I'm feeling, frustrated or upset, and then the narrative could get cooking into, I'm really upset about that, or I'm angry about that, and then it can kind of start to feel when one becomes identified. This is my experience. Like I am this angry person right now. And so that's quite a bit different then I'm having the experience of this emotion of anger. There's some distance in that. There's less identification. And so a great foundation that I've found helpful all throughout my adult life is to really differentiate between experience and behaviors and the fundamental essence of who and what we are. So what I mean by that is I could, let's say, not enjoy how someone's behaving or relating. I can really disapprove of it even. I can take action to oppose it or to set boundaries around certain behaviors of others, and could also be true to myself. I think that it's important, however, and I always try my best to do this, is to say, okay, this is how this person's behaving, and that's what I disapprove of, and that's what I don't like or don't regard. But at the same time, I can also see the essence of that person is different, and it expresses differently than their behaviors. So I could see maybe like the essence and the light in the person or the spirit in a person, and recognize that that is more fundamentally their true expression, even though their behaviors are very unconscious or very divisive. And so I think it's a good to take a break and look at, not approving of behaviors, or let's say not enjoying the experience of certain emotions coming up that might be difficult, but separating those experiences out from the essential essence of what I am and what you are, your essential essence that has been with you, present for your entire life, since as far back as you remember. Your essential essence endures with a expression of constancy, even as experiences come and go, even as different encounters of relating come in to experience and then recede. As emotions arise and then pass away, or some linger longer, and others, come into the mix and change the quality of your experience. And so there's all of these comings and goings, emotions, thoughts, conclusions, beliefs that change when we have new perspectives or new understandings. And there's this constant shift and change in this inner environment, which can feel like an ecosystem. But all the while, there's a sense of who and what you are that has this flavor of constancy. And this is really worth looking at, because it really can kind of set heaven and hell apart as far as our lived experience of being, and our lived experience of who and what we are essentially. And what I mean by that is when you have a sense that what you are fundamentally is that which does not come and go, even as experiences come and go, there can be this kind of energetic landing in that sense of being, that sense of who and what you are, a kind of coming home to your essential self that is ever present in the midst of all of this change. It's the sense of who and what you are that's essentially unchanging. It may take on these flavors in this ecosystem of change, but essentially it's unchanging. To use an analogy, it's like the open, clear sky that does have all of these colors and energetics and constellations of clouds or sunshine, rain, snow, hail that all wind, that all come into the ecosystem, but fundamentally they all appear within this constancy of this clear open sky. There's this chant of Paramahansa Yogananda's that I used to find mysterious when I was very young, and I heard it at a very young age. I think I was, maybe 8 or 9 years old when I heard this chant, and I believe Yogananda wrote it, but I'm not sure about that. But I know he liked to chant it, and the words were, and he'd often speak of spirit or this sense of unconditional presence of being as the mother, from which all of this display of life is born. And so in this chant, he says, "I am the sky, Mother. I am the sky. I am the vast blue ocean of sky. I am the little drop of the sky." And then he uses this really interesting word, frozen sky. Frozen sky, frozen sky. And you feel, I always felt like, wow, this is a really interesting juxtaposition of this frozen seems so concrete and solid, and the sky, it feels so open and clear. And so as a kid, I was like, what's a frozen sky? But it was one of those questions that just kind of stuck with me. And the more I delved into this question in my adult years, my young adult years, and even still, about the nature of this constancy, that which does not come and go, delved into a direct experience and a sense of what remains still in the midst of activity. What is the very ground of movement and expression that remains ever present? And many people speak of this as the awareness that perceives the movement, as though you see the movement of thoughts, you see the arising and passing away of emotions, but what is observing them by contrast is quite still. That spotlight of attention that has the capacity to focus seems to almost be imbued with a kind of stillness. It's like turning that spotlight of stillness that recognizes movement as something that contrasts that constancy of attention. And so this is a way of describing it. If we let our attention get quite wide and more global, and we open our awareness and we're listening to the sounds in the room or beyond the room, we're sensing a larger space, not just the contained space of our local body, but we're sensing the temperature in the room or the quality of the air, or we can use our imaginal mind to kind of extrapolate out a sense of space around the room or around the building beyond wherever we are physically present. And when our attention opens like that, it can feel more like that vast blue ocean of sky that Yogananda was speaking about. We can then again pull our attention in and have it be very focused. And it can feel like a little drop of the sky, of that awareness is gathered in and attending to one specific thing. But either way, he speaks about this as this frozen sky. And in my way of connecting with this lyric is there's this sense of constancy. So even in this movement of our attention to be more global or more focused, more vast or more gathered and pointed and specifically attending to a more narrow focus, there's this quality of awareness that contrasts everything that it's aware of, the objects of awareness. And this person who wrote in beautifully, this woman mentions how she's able to notice thoughts as objects. And so she's pointing out this contrast that I'm talking about. This kind of movement of the thinking mind that contrasts that sense of awareness that can recognize movement precisely because it has this corollary expression of stillness.